Hello everyone, welcome to this Scroll Ensemble classical music improvisation channel. I am Robert. I'm hoping this will be a first video in a regular series in which I want to dive into the world of Partimento on a melodic instrument, in my case the oboe or recorder. If you are not sure what Partimento is or are curious about an overview of my research ideas, feel free to check out this introduction video. My aim here is to show my own learning process. If you are interested in learning more about this, Partimento on a melodic instrument, you could join the MentiParti course in a few weeks in Basel. See the description below for more information. In this video, my focus is on solo Baroque improvisation and Partimento. And one of my big loves in music is the collection of 12 Fantasias by Telemann for unaccompanied flute. And then I'm always interested in finding ways to improvise my own Fantasias. So I revisited this idea with a new perspective of Partimento, and my first stop was focusing on a particular texture which I had always found hard to improvise. A broken counterpoint of two voices, which means that by jumping between two notes, Telemann suggests two different voices, which we could imagine as the soprano and bass melody in a very simple, more or less note against note texture. And that is the topic of this video. I had two goals. One, being able to use Telemann's texture freely in my own improvisations by practicing standard note combinations that work, so I don't have to make it all up in the moment and think about it. Two, applying this texture to Partimento to focus more on the voice leading of separate parts. Before, when improvising on a Partimento, I often used chordal approaches. But I realized when I followed some keyboard classes that I was missing a key element. Applying this chordal approach, I wasn't really aware of the voice leading of the different voices separately. Telemann's texture gives space to think about this more. Specifically when it comes to preparing dissonances, which really one needs only two main voices for, the bass and then the voice which prepares, plays and resolves the dissonance. My approach here was to put together a little method, mostly for myself, but I did imagine I could use it for others. So the beginning is set up with less experienced improvisers in mind. I decided to start with parallel thirds, because technically speaking, at least on a wind instrument, it's quite easy and it's almost like maybe playing an ornament. So this way we start off learning and immediately feel like we could actually do this. Because many original Partimenti start off practicing more complex ideas, I decided to make some of my own mini Partimenti to really focus on specific things. Here, for example, you can see my little Partimento for practicing thirds. Following Partimento methods, I then work on variation, transposition, and how to cadence. Specifically when it comes to variation and cadence, I use Telemann's examples, extracted from his Fantasias. This is the cadence Telemann uses often in thirds. Then I looked in Telemann's Fantasias for options to vary these thirds. Once I had started with the parallel movement, I was inspired by Catherine Motus and her old friend Tinctoris to divide the learning in different types of movement and different bass interval movements. So I started with parallel movement and could then go to oblique and contrary and move to the dissonances. And then in the bass, I would look at what I could do when the bass just moves by step or a third or a fourth. So here's a little Partimento focusing on oblique motion in sixths and fifths, when the bass is only moving by step. And then I felt ready for the first real Partimento, slightly adjusting the numbers for our purpose of combining parallel movement and oblique movement, and of course in the cadence the secret ingredient of contrary movement. In contrary motion, I ran into a bit of trouble. There are a lot of options, and especially as a start-up texture, it felt weird to be completely comprehensive and just study many hours every possible option. So I focused on some of Telemann's favorite contrary motion ideas instead. I was also very interested in dissonance treatment and how Telemann deals with it in his Fantasias. And I loved finding out that Telemann basically prepares all of his dissonances very neatly, which we can also learn, for instance, in the Partimento methods by Fenaroli and Durante. Here's an example of the dissonance of a fourth prepared by a fifth in Telemann's Fantasias. And Fenaroli has specific partimenti to practice these dissonance treatments, and so I combined Telemann's approaches into a version of this Fenaroli partimento. I should still add some little assignments here and there to get people to improvise more freely based on these ideas, so they can really improvise their own fantasias with a few hints. And my colleague Isaac Alonso also made a great suggestion to give some bits of Telemann Fantasia in Partimento notation, and to see if one can get to the final Telemann result through improvising on the bass. So, this is where I'm at. Two final remarks. This texture is used a lot in Telemann's Fantasias. You find it all over the place, but at the same time, it's never the only texture in a Fantasia. So really, this is just a step within a larger process. Secondly, Partimento maestro Peter van Toer pointed out that in the Partimento world, counterpoint lessons in two parts would have probably contained more invertible counterpoint using stock themes, a bit like Bach's Inventions. So less vertical and less dry than my approach. But I think I needed it, and this is not really possible on a solo melodic instrument. It did, however, ring another bell, because actually Telemann uses invertible counterpoint with this very texture to suggest a sort of pseudo-fugal movement, and this happens in no less than 3 of his Fantasias. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts. Feel free to like, share and subscribe.